everybody! So I am back again and I'm currently on vacation from school. I've got a whole week off and I put out a video last week asking you guys to ask me a few questions. So now here I am to answer them. Alright, so the first question I was asked was from Dr. Robotnik. If you guys haven't checked him out, you should definitely go take a look at his channel. I'll link him down below. He was one of the first student respiratory therapist YouTubers that I started watching before I started my own channel here, and kind of, inspired me to get the ball rolling because he had a lot of really great content and answers a lot of questions actually. So kind of one of the reasons I decided to start, to have some more people out there doing what he was doing, because I thought it was pretty cool. His first question is, how much autonomy do respiratory therapists have in the hospitals in my area regarding intubation, vascular access, things like that? So this is actually kind of an interesting question because it does vary from state to state. Here in Nevada, a lot of places don't allow RTs to intubate. I do know they are starting certain campaigns at a few of the hospitals where they're having the RTs retrain, basically, from what I understood from what one of my preceptors had mentioned to me. And then they have to do so many successful intubations with a physician at their side, after of course having watched them very closely perform intubations as well. And same thing with ART lines. There are facilities that are having respiratory therapists re-go through training just to make sure they still have all of those skills. And same thing, they have to watch so many successful ART lines and then also be able to successfully place them a certain number of times before they are given the autonomy to be able to do those things on their own. Dr. Robotnik's next question was, what subjects did I excel in and what subjects did I struggle in? So it's kind of funny, I feel like this is kind of a hard question to ask because I really enjoyed most of my classes. I think some of my most recent classes have been my favorite. Since I'm in my third semester, just finished my third semester, I of course have not taken my mechanical ventilation class, as well as a few other things like some of my advanced diagnostics and the remaining neonatal classes, things of that sort. So some of the ones I really enjoyed though were, I really liked critical care because there was a lot of lab in it, a lot of hands-on, it was a lot of fun and very interesting because of course that was a class where we learned to do all of these things that we hear about. We recovered doing ABGs, although I learned that in the previous semester. We went over intubation, extubation, a few other things. So some of the main things that you hear about RTs doing, that's what was covered in the critical care course, as well as in the emergency care, where we were talking about various emergency situations and how we would handle them from a respiratory therapy standpoint. And then I also actually really enjoyed the pulmonary rehab course that I took because it is essential to make sure that once our patients, once these people have left the hospital and have had their diagnosis, that they still have that support from us after the initial diagnosis. So I thought that was really interesting, looking into the rehab facilities and kind of how that functions and how much help they really are, and the increase in success rates and the increase in those survival rates when someone does successfully complete a rehabilitation program or continues to use those rehabilitation programs for respiratory diseases. And then of course what I struggled in most, had some issues with pharmacology, keeping the various dosages in my brain and mixing up medications. So this kind of leads into one of the next questions from Della RT TV. She's also another student respiratory therapist, a YouTuber, so definitely check her out. I'll leave her link down below also. She does answer a lot of various questions and kind of let you know what's going on through her program, and great channel. She's a very real girl. She'll tell you exactly how things are. She doesn't sugarcoat anything, which I absolutely love. And her question was, how did I study for pharmacology? Honestly, like I mentioned before, that was not my strongest subject, so I probably had to put the most time into pharmacology. And I actually ended up using a lot of flashcards, just repetition, to remember the medications, side effects, things of that sort. And then watching YouTube videos. There's actually a pretty decent channel called Speed Pharmacology, I believe, and I'll link that channel down below. It doesn't have a lot of medications out yet, but it does cover things like anticholinergics, adrenergics, things of that sort. There's a lot of different areas that we use as respiratory therapists, so I'll leave that link down below so that you guys can check it out. And then another thing that I would do, and this actually went well into me doing my clinicals also, we would get our sheets of paper that would tell us what medications each patient had, how many times a day. So to help myself memorize these, because I was having issues memorizing like the combinations for some of the inhalers, what was in each one, things like that, I would break it down on every sheet. So on those sheets there's usually a couple lines in between. I would write the same thing for every medication I did. I would basically just write down the breakdown if it was more than one medication combined. I would write down the generic names, the brand names, dosages, common side effects, things to look for. And that actually really helped me a lot, because you do see a lot of similar medications at each hospital, because of course each physician has their preference as to whether they like the generic, the name brand, or whatever they're prescribing, or a patient population can have a big effect on that as well. If you have a particular type of disease process more commonly in one hospital, you're going to see certain medications more. So that actually helped me a lot, and by the end of my clinical I wasn't having to write them down anymore, but I would sit there and I would still list to myself what each medication was. So that's what helped me. If you guys have suggestions for how you studied pharmacology or anything that helped you, definitely leave it down below, and so that other people can get a little more information from that, because that is a common question I get, and unfortunately it was not my best subject, so I have very few tips for it. And then the next question from Della RTTV was, what do I love the most about respiratory therapy school? I think for me it's probably a little bit corny, and I'm sorry, but I'm just being honest. Did you ever sit through one of those classes in high school and you're thinking, gosh, when am I ever going to use this again? How is this going to help me in my life? Where is this going to take me? You don't have that feeling in respiratory therapy school. You know every single class you're taking, you know every single piece of information you're learning is relevant to helping you do your job better in the future. And it's not even just the gratification that you get out of doing your job, because I feel like it's a very fulfilling career. You get to help people. You know that information you're learning is important to help people in the future. So even though things get difficult, everything you're learning is important, and there's a reason for you learning, and that's huge to me, because it doesn't matter what class I'm in, I know that that's going to help me be a successful respiratory therapist and help me help heal people, I guess. So that's one of my favorite things about the courses themselves, and it is very fast-paced, and that's something that I kind of need. I tend to get a little bit bored occasionally, so the fact that the classes are very fast-paced and it's a very fast-paced profession is amazing also, because I don't find myself getting bored. And next question that she asked was, have I started studying for my board exams yet? Do I have that book here? Hang on, let me break it back. Sorry guys, should have planned that better. Okay, so I have been studying a little bit. I've been doing general review of anatomy and physiology. I try to keep up on reviewing medication since it's not my strongest point. And I have also been using respiratory care exam review from Gary Persing. I've been using this, and they have a lot of online material as well that kind of mimics the various exams that we have to take for credentialing. So that's actually really good, because it gives a full breakdown on each section. So if you answer a question incorrectly, it tells you why it's incorrect, and then gives you another opportunity to answer the question correctly for the online material anyways, and it breaks it down, because obviously if I'm getting a question wrong, there's something I'm not understanding about the physiology or something happening in that scenario. So it's great, it gives you a breakdown rather than just saying, nope, B is wrong, you should have chosen D, and then you don't know why. So it's great to have that kind of backup. And the last question that she asked was, do I want to work with neonates, peds, adults, or what area I want to work in when I graduate? I feel like this is kind of a hard question at the moment, because I haven't done all of my clinical rotations quite yet. Everybody says they want to work in the NICU or they want to work in the ER. I obviously haven't done all of these rotations yet, so I can say that I am very interested in working in the NICU eventually, but I haven't done that rotation yet, so you never know. Maybe I'll go to that rotation and decide it's not for me. I've spoken with plenty of other people that thought they wanted to go into one area, but after that rotation or shadowing someone in that area, they decided it wasn't for them. So I'm still a little bit undecided. I know that I'm leaning more towards NICU eventually, but I would love to have that rotation so that I know for sure that that's what I want to do. And then last question from Brittany Foley. She asked if I'm working on my associate's or my bachelor's degree. I'm currently in the associate's program, but I do intend to get my bachelor's once I graduate. There's a few things though that are happening with respiratory therapy and bachelor's degrees. For example, here in Nevada, after I think it's November, there are actually no more starting programs for associates only. All of the programs in Nevada will be bachelor's programs. You don't have an option, you have to get a bachelor's. Because as many people may have heard, respiratory therapy has been working towards moving to a bachelor's only profession for a very long time, and they're trying to kind of expedite that process to make sure they have the most educated individuals going out into the workforce possible. Something that's interesting is I've noticed a lot of people don't keep up with their state societies and the AARC, which this is where you're going to get your information from on what's happening in our profession and what is changing. So what I'll do is I found some information in the mission statement from the AARC for 2015 to 2020, I believe, and I'll leave that link below as well, and it does talk about their plans for changing it to bachelor's only. There is mention of giving people, I want to say 7 years to get their bachelor's, which is a good amount of time, but as we know, schooling is expensive, so they do need to give that extended period so people have time to come up with the resources to be able to take those courses and make educated decisions on where they want to get their bachelor's from. For example, I am already in a program before they went to bachelor's only, so I will have approximately 7 years from what I was understanding when I went to a state society meeting to get my bachelor's degree. So something I do strongly encourage anybody to do, join your state society, see what's happening in your state, because that's where change is going to happen for our profession also. If you're advocating for respiratory therapists to have more autonomy in the workplace, that's where it's going to start. You need to get involved at a state level if possible, as well as make sure you're staying into contact with various organizations, going to the conferences if at all possible. I know they get expensive sometimes, but it's important to see what's changing and what's happening in our program and our soon-to-be profession. So that's it for now with the questions. If you guys do have any other questions, feel free to leave them down below. Like I said, if you guys have anything such as what respiratory therapists are allowed to do in your state, or what you did to study for pharmacology and helped you feel successful and confident in that area, leave those things down below so that we can share with each other and learn from each other. All right, guys, I will see you next time.